The first time I saw Adriel, he looked like someone who had just outrun a storm and wasn't convinced it wouldn't catch up. And maybe that's why I couldn't look away. There was something magnetic about a person who carried silence like armor. I had never expected my senior year of college to begin with a stranger unlocking the door to the apartment I had claimed as my personal sanctuary. But there he was, stepping inside like a shadow slipping into a room full of light. His dark hair fell across his forehead in a way that looked almost accidental, yet impossibly perfect. His eyes flicked to me only briefly, barely long enough to acknowledge I existed. So this was Adriel, my new roommate, the one who had confirmed the housing arrangement with no more than 3 short texts, the one my friend Logan warned me about with a quiet shrug and the words, "He's a bit different." Different was an understatement. I straightened, suddenly aware of the half-folded laundry on the couch and the faint scent of microwaved noodles in the air. He closed the door behind him, moved past me, and set his single duffel bag near the hallway without a sound. "You must be Corbin," he said finally, his voice low, smooth, and carrying a tired edge. "Yeah, hey, welcome," I replied, too bright, too eager, to me. I shoved my hands into my pockets to stop myself from waving them around like I was hosting a game show. Adriel didn't look at me again. Instead, he scanned the living room, the kitchen, the hallway, as if mapping exits. Then he nodded once, more to himself than to me, and walked away. "Okay," I whispered. "Not a talker. Cool." But the truth was, from the moment he walked down that hallway, I was hooked. For the first week, our lives overlapped like mismatched puzzle pieces. I left early for the gym. He returned just as I walked out the door. I cooked dinner while he shut himself in his room with the kind of quiet that felt heavy instead of peaceful. Every time we crossed paths, he seemed surprised by my presence, as if roommates were theoretical creatures rather than actual humans who shared a fridge. What I learned about him came from the smallest things. He read late into the night. I could see the soft light under his door. He moved through the apartment with the caution of someone who didn't want to be heard. He ate little, slept little, spoke little. And yet, every time I saw him, I felt the same pull, like he was a riddle I wasn't supposed to solve but desperately wanted to. On the 7th morning, everything shifted. I walked into the kitchen still half asleep, wearing the faded tank top I usually reserved for laundry days. I froze. Adriel was already there. He stood at the counter, sleeves rolled up, quietly pouring coffee into a mug. His hair was damp from the shower, falling in messy waves that somehow made him even more unfairly good-looking. His expression was unreadable, but there was a softness to his posture I hadn't seen before. "Morning," I said. He looked up, really looked this time. His eyes lingered on me for a second too long before he nodded. "Morning." That was it. One word. But it was the first time he said it without sounding like it took effort. I pointed at the mug. "Wow, you drink coffee." His brow furrowed. "Most people do." "Right. Yep. True. I'm a person who does that. Sometimes." He poured a second mug and slid it toward me. "You look like you need this more than I do." I stared at the mug as if it might explode. "You made me coffee?" He shrugged. "You were there." It wasn't exactly affectionate, but for Adriel, it might as well have been a love letter. The more I tried not to stare at him, the more I failed. He carried secrets in his shoulders, tension in his jaw, questions in the silence trailing behind him, and I found myself wanting to know everything he wouldn't say out loud. Our little exchanges grew. Short comments in passing. Quiet observations about the weather, the building, classes. Minute explanations when our schedules overlapped and we found ourselves standing in the same room longer than expected. He was still distant, but no longer unreachable. One evening, I came home soaked from a surprise storm. I tossed my wet backpack on the floor and cursed loudly at the universe. Adriel appeared from the hallway, startled, eyes sharp with concern. "Are you hurt?" His voice had urgency in it, real emotion. It froze me in place. I blinked at him. "No, just wet." His shoulders dropped an inch. Not much, but enough that I noticed. He stepped closer, hesitated, then reached for a towel hanging on the back of the couch. Here. Thanks, I said, taking it from him. Are you okay? He didn't answer right away. His gaze traveled from the dripping water at my feet to my face, where something softened and then retreated. You should change out of those clothes, he murmured. Right. Yeah, I will. But I didn't move. Neither did he. The air between us felt electric, the kind that hums before you understand a storm is coming. Then he stepped back. The moment broke. Good night, Corbin. I swallowed. Night, Adriel. The next shift was accidental. I had just finished a late class and found him sitting on the balcony, knees drawn up slightly, eyes fixed on the night sky like it held something he had lost. The sliding door was cracked open, letting in a cool breeze tinged with rain. I debated interrupting him. Being near him felt unpredictable, like stepping onto a frozen lake and hoping it held. But something pulled me forward. Mind if I join? His head turned slowly. Without a word, he scooted over an inch. Invitation accepted. I sat down beside him, close enough to feel the quiet warmth radiating from him. He didn't look at me again, but he didn't have to. I could sense the tension in him. Tight, controlled, lived in. After a long silence, he spoke. Do you ever feel like you're two different people? Like the version everyone sees is just the one that's easiest to understand? I glanced at him. The question felt too raw, too personal, too revealing. Sometimes, I admitted, more than I like. He exhaled, slow and heavy. I'm not good at this. At talking? I teased gently. No. He shook his head. At letting people in. I swallowed, throat tight. You're doing fine. He finally looked at me. And in that moment, something unspoken shifted, like a door quietly unlocking. Maybe, he said quietly, but I don't know how to be different. You don't have to be different with me. His eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. The smallest moment, barely a breath, but enough to make my heart trip over itself. Corbin, he whispered, almost warningly. Yeah. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. The silence said everything. The sky darkened. The air cooled, but the space between us felt warm. For the first time, I realized Adriel wasn't distant by nature. He was distant by history, by fear, by pain he didn't trust anyone to see. And God, I wanted to see it. Wanted to see him. That night, he didn't retreat to his room. He stayed on the balcony long after I went back inside. When I finally fell asleep, the image of him, quiet, thoughtful, fragile in ways he didn't want to be, hung behind my eyelids. And for the first time since he moved in, I wondered if I wasn't the only one being pulled in deeper. The next morning felt different before I even opened my eyes. There was a quiet energy in the apartment, like the air itself remembered the night on the balcony. I stretched, rubbed sleep from my eyes, and stepped into the hallway. Adriel was already awake. He stood in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a half-finished cup of tea. His hair was still messy from sleep, and he wore a soft gray t-shirt that made him look startlingly human. Not distant, not guarded, just a guy who had stayed up too late thinking about something he didn't want to think about. He looked up as I walked in, and for the first time since we became roommates, he offered a small, warm smile. It was brief, but it struck deeper than it should have. Morning, he said. I stared stupidly for a second before managing, hey. He gestured toward the stove. I made extra oatmeal if you want some. You're feeding me now? I teased lightly. That's new. He rolled his eyes, but there was a faint curve to his lips. Don't make it weird. Too late. It's already weird. A soft breath escaped him. Again, not quite a laugh, but close enough to count. I moved beside him, grabbing a bowl, trying not to be too aware of the small space between our bodies. As I scooped oatmeal, I glanced at him. You stayed out on the balcony pretty late. He stiffened, the ease of earlier fading. I needed air, he said quietly. Everything okay? He hesitated. I don't know. There was so much behind those words. Questions I wanted to ask, comfort I wanted to offer, boundaries I didn't want to violate. So instead, I nodded and kept my voice gentle. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. He looked at me then, really looked, and something flickered in his eyes. Vulnerability, gratitude, fear, and before I could decipher it, he turned away, grabbing his mug. I'll keep that in mind, he murmured. But I wasn't sure whether he meant it. Over the next few days, something subtle but undeniable unfolded between us. He talked more. He lingered longer. He didn't shut his door all the way. The shift was quiet, gradual, like thawing snow. He wasn't suddenly outgoing or open, but he wasn't disappearing into his room the moment he came home. And every time our eyes met, something pulled tight in my chest. One afternoon, I returned from the gym to find him sitting on the floor of the living room, papers spread across the carpet. His laptop was open, his glasses, thin, black-rimmed, effortlessly attractive, perched on his nose. I stopped in the doorway. I didn't know you wore glasses. He looked up, startled, then pushed them up his nose in a motion so unconsciously adorable I forgot how breathing worked. Only when I study. Studying what? He pointed at the papers. Architecture. I've got a project due next week. I dropped onto the couch beside him without thinking. Want help? He stared at me as if I'd offered to perform open-heart surgery. You don't even know what I'm doing. I shrugged. True, but I can hand you pencils dramatically and offer moral support. Maybe wave a snack at you when you look tired. Against his best efforts, he smiled. A real one. Bright. Unrestrained. It hit me like sunlight. You're ridiculous, he said. And yet, I'm here. He huffed softly but shifted his papers so I could sit closer. I leaned over his drawings, tracing the lines with my eyes. This is good, I said. Like really good. He didn't respond immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet. You think so? Yeah, I think you're talented. And maybe a little bit of a perfectionist, but that's part of the charm. He shook his head, but his cheeks warmed slightly. I pretended not to notice, because calling attention to it felt like poking a scared animal that had finally come within arm's reach. We worked for over an hour. Well, he worked, and I provided commentary and occasional snacks. At one point, he leaned closer to check a detail on the screen, and his shoulder brushed mine. It was barely a touch, but it sent a current through me so sharp I forgot the alphabet for a second. He didn't pull away. Neither did I. The first time I saw him angry, it caught me off guard. Not angry at me, angry at himself. He was in his room, door half open, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. His breath was uneven, fists clenched at his sides. He muttered something too quiet to understand, and for a moment, I froze, not knowing whether I should intrude. Then he hit the wall. Not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to hurt. I stepped forward before I could think. Adriel? He spun around, eyes sharp, wide, panicked. For a moment, he looked like he didn't recognize me. I took a slow breath. Hey, it's okay. Talk to me. His jaw trembled, not visibly, but enough for me to feel it. It's not, he whispered. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. He shook his head. It's not something you fix by talking. Maybe not, I said gently, stepping closer, but you shouldn't go through it alone. His shoulders rose and fell in a harsh breath. His eyes dropped to the floor. I don't know how to do this, Corbin. Do what? Be around someone who actually cares. The words were soft, broken, sharp enough to cut. My chest tightened. I didn't touch him. I wasn't sure if touch would comfort him or shatter him, but I stood close enough that he could feel I wasn't leaving. Adriel, I said quietly, I'm not going anywhere. His eyes lifted, and for a moment, he looked unbelievably young. Not physically, emotionally, like someone who had been holding their world together with shaking hands and was terrified of what would happen if he let go. He stepped back, swallowing hard. I need a minute. I nodded. I'll be here. And I was. Later that night, he emerged from his room. His face was calmer, but his eyes were tired. He sat beside me on the couch, leaving only an inch of space between us. I'm sorry about earlier, he said. You don't have to apologize for being human. He looked down at his hands. That's the problem. It's been a long time since anyone expected me to be. I wanted to ask what he meant. What happened? Who hurt him? But I sensed the story was one he wasn't ready to share. Not yet. So instead, I leaned slightly closer and bumped his shoulder with mine. Whenever you're ready, I said, I'll listen. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, quietly, thank you, Corbin. 2 simple words, but they felt like the start of something neither of us could ignore anymore. The next weekend, he surprised me again. It was late afternoon, the sun warm and golden through the windows. I was folding laundry on the couch, badly, when Adriel walked out of his room holding 2 helmets. I blinked. You have a motorcycle? He hesitated. I was going to ask if you wanted to ride with me, but if you're scared. I stood immediately. I am absolutely terrified. When do we leave? His mouth twitched. 5 minutes. Riding with him felt like stepping into another world. The wind roared past us, the streetlights blurred, and the warmth of his back pressed against my chest made the whole universe feel sharper, brighter, and possibly alive. When he stopped at a cliff overlooking the city, the sky was washed in orange and pink. We sat on the hood of the bike, legs dangling over the edge of the viewpoint. I didn't know you rode, I said. There's a lot you don't know about me. I nudged him. Then tell me. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at the horizon, the wind lifting strands of his hair. My mother left when I was 11, he said slowly. My dad wasn't much of anything after that. I learned early not to depend on people. My chest tightened. Adriel. He shook his head. Don't. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I just want you to understand why I am the way I am. I reached for his hand without thinking. He let me take it. His fingers curled around mine like he had been waiting for someone to hold them. You're not alone anymore, I said softly. He turned toward me, eyes shining, not with tears, but with something deeper, something fragile and hopeful. Corbin, he whispered, I don't know how to do this. Then let's figure it out together. He exhaled shakily, leaning closer, so close I could feel his breath on my skin. The moment stretched, tensed, teetered. But before anything could happen, he pulled back, eyes conflicted. Not yet, he murmured. I nodded, even as my heart ached. Okay. And I meant it. Because for the first time, I knew he wasn't running from me. He was running from the fear of wanting something he didn't think he deserved. A few days later, everything changed. I found him sitting at the kitchen table long after midnight, shoulders slumped, face hidden in his hands. A single paper lay in front of him, a letter. The moment he heard me, he tensed. Don't, he said softly. I pulled out a chair anyway and sat opposite him. Adriel talked to me. He lifted the paper with trembling fingers. My father's sick. He wants me to come home. The words were simple but weighted, like stones dropping into deep water. Is that bad? I asked carefully. He stared at the letter. We haven't spoken in 6 years. My heart clenched. What do you want to do? He looked at me then, eyes full of confusion and fear. I don't know. I don't know how to face him. I don't know if he even wants me there, or if he's just... He broke off, voice shaking. I reached across the table, covering his hand with mine. I'm here, no matter what you decide. He stared at our hands. Then, slowly, he flipped his palm and laced his fingers with mine. Corbin, he whispered, what if going back destroys everything I've built? Then we rebuild it, I said. Together. He inhaled a shaky breath. And for the first time, he didn't pull away. The next morning arrived with a heavy stillness. as if the world itself was waiting for Adriel to decide what came next. He barely touched his breakfast, pushing scrambled eggs around his plate without eating them. I sat across from him, watching the tension in his shoulders rise and fall like waves hitting rocks. Finally, he spoke. I called him. I set my fork down. How did it go? Adriel let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest for years. He said he wants me to come home. He sounded tired. Do you think he meant it? I don't know. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. I keep telling myself not to expect anything, but some part of me still wants. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Closure has a gravity all its own. I reached across the table, brushing my fingers lightly against his wrist. Whatever happens, you're not going alone. His head snapped up. Corbin, I'm serious. He shook his head, shutting down the idea before it could breathe. No, I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. He swallowed, eyes softening. Why? The question was quiet, but something in it trembled. I leaned back, letting the truth settle between us. Because you don't have to face the hardest things in your life by yourself. His jaw clenched, as if the words hit deeper than he expected. I don't want to drag you into my mess, he whispered. You're not dragging me anywhere. I'm walking in because I choose to. For a moment, the world seemed to hold still. Adriel stared at me like he was trying to memorize the shape of my face, the certainty in my voice, the steadiness I was offering him without conditions. Then he nodded, barely, but it was enough. Okay, he murmured. If you really want to, you can come with me. I smiled. Then let's go. The drive out of the city was long, marked by stretches of silence that weren't entirely uncomfortable. But every so often, I'd catch Adriel glancing at me from the corner of his eye, small, quick looks, like he needed reassurance that I was still there. His old hometown was quieter than I expected. Rows of weathered houses, cracked sidewalks, and fences leaning slightly from too many seasons. We pulled up to a small one-story home with paint peeling near the roof and a porch light flickering stubbornly in the afternoon sun. Adriel stared at the house, motionless, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. You okay? I asked softly. He didn't answer at first. Then, with a breath that trembled just slightly, he nodded. Let's get this over with. We walked up the porch steps together. He knocked once, then again. A long minute passed before the door creaked open. His father stood there, a man older than I expected, with tired eyes and a slump in his posture that spoke of too many unfinished apologies. Adriel, he breathed, voice fragile. Dad. The word came out flat, controlled, but I could feel the storm beneath it. His father tried to smile, but it faltered. You look older. That's what time does, Adriel replied. Silence stretched tight between them. Then his father's eyes landed on me. And you are? I stepped forward, offering my hand. I'm Corbin, a friend. Adriel shot me a quick glance, but didn't correct me. His father shook my hand with a nod, then stepped aside. Come in. The living room was small, cluttered but clean. Photographs lined the walls, family pictures, but none recent. I saw a photo of a younger Adriel, smiling in a way he didn't anymore. Something twisted in my chest. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table. I stood back, hands in my pockets, trying to look less intrusive than I felt. His father cleared his throat. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't, Adriel said. I deserve that. Another silence. Heavy, unforgiving. I thought I had more time, his father said quietly. But the doctor was clear. And when they tell you you're out of chances, you start thinking about all the things you should have said sooner. Adriel stared at the table, jaw tight. You could have tried before now. I know. I should have. I wasn't a good father after your mother left. I shut down. I pushed you away. And I'm sorry. Truly. Adriel didn't respond. His breathing was steady, but his hands trembled slightly where they rested in his lap. You didn't deserve the way I treated you, his father continued. I was angry. Not at you. Just at everything. And you took the hit for it. I stepped forward, gently placing a hand on Adriel's shoulder. He didn't look at me, but he didn't pull away either. Finally, he whispered, why now? Because I don't want to leave this world knowing the last thing I did was break my son. Adriel's breath hitched, a tiny sound, but enough to crack something open inside me. His father leaned forward, voice thick. I can't fix the past, but I want to at least try to fix the part of it that's still alive. If you'll let me. The room went quiet. Then Adriel stood abruptly. I need air. He walked out onto the porch. I followed. Outside, he braced his hands on the railing, head bowed, chest rising and falling too fast. Adriel, I said softly. I don't know what to feel, he said, voice shaking. I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I hated him for so long, and now he wants forgiveness like it's something I can just hand out. You don't owe him forgiveness, I said gently. You decide what you want to give, and when. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening, not with tears, but with the weight of years. What if I never figure it out? Then I'll stand right here with you until you do. His breath faltered. He turned toward me slowly, as if afraid moving too fast would shatter the moment. Corbin. Yeah? He closed his eyes, exhaling a shaky breath. Thank you. For being here. For staying. For everything. I stepped closer, until our shoulders nearly touched. You don't have to thank me. I'm here because I want to be. He looked at me then, really looked, and something unspoken passed between us. A shift, a realization, a quiet, powerful certainty. And for once, he didn't pull away.